You want me to ask them to turn that down?
No, I'm fine.
All right, good afternoon. This is the Town of Dewey Beach Monthly Town Commissioner meeting being held at the Dewey Beach Life Saving Station and via Zoom. Today is Friday, July 15th, 2022, and it's 3 o'clock. With that, I'd like to convene the Town Commissioners meeting. First of all, can I have a motion for adoption of the agenda?
Motion.
Second.
Any discussion? Any? All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Hello, Commissioner Givens. Good to see you. From an opening ceremony, let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Don't forget where it is. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. Roll call, since we're both Zoom and real. Commissioner Jasinski.
Present.
Commissioner Givens.
Here.
Commissioner Persinger.
Present.
Commissioner Bauer.
Here.
And Mayor Bill Stevens here. In addition, we have Lieutenant Hocker, Council Fred Townsend, Town Manager Bill Zolper, as well as members of our Town Hall. Public comments. Is there anyone here for public comments? Kate, is there anyone here in the waiting room? Okay. Let's move on to updates and announcements. Town Manager.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So I'd like to thank Highway 1 for the 4th of July fireworks and the great cooperation with our police department. I'd like to thank the Rehoboth Volunteer Fire Company, Chuck Snyder, Sussex County EMS, Delaware State Police EOD, and a special thanks again to the police and the lifeguards. They did an outstanding job during the 4th of July. We had no major incidents. Everything went really well. DelDOT supplied the trucks. That was coordinated through the lieutenant. He can update if there's anything else on that. Conditional use right now for the COVID, that's still in effect in the 11 different businesses around the town until October 31st. April, I sent out a letter explaining to the individual business owners that they have until October 31st to get a conditional use in to change from the COVID conditional use, the expansion of premises. I think Fred has said that's the correct verbiage for that. We've only had really 2 that have come back to us at this point. So Assistant Town Manager Jim Dedes is personally reaching out to each one of those owners to let them know that, hey, October 31st is when it does expire. So there's no surprises from any of those business owners. Any questions on that? We hired a part-time building official who's going to go out, who's going to work 20 hours a week, part-time, and they're going to go out and they're going to help and they're going to look at making sure folks have business permits, licenses, and building permits when they're out there. With Dawn just does not have the time to be up there reviewing all the plans that are coming into her, meeting with the different builders, and then also being out on the street, walking and looking. So we're going to have somebody come in for 20 hours a week for that. On the 18th, which is Monday at 6 o'clock, right out here on Dagsworthy Street. I think most of you came out last year. They're having the Dewey Beach Lifeguard Competition. You're going to have lifeguard organizations from the Mid-Atlantic area here, and I'll send out a reminder on Monday. That's 6 o'clock right out here on the beach. I also like to recognize that the men's 4x4 relay team finished #1 in the regionals this week in Rehoboth, and their second team from Dewey Beach finished 2nd. So both of those teams have qualified to go to nationals, which will be out in California later this summer. We have a new alderman, and she'll introduce herself when the mayor brings her up. Junior lifeguard program, if we could go ahead with the slides on that if you have them. So junior lifeguard program, first slide will be new alderman, who will be coming up a little bit later. The junior lifeguard program is going really well. We have over 65 kids signed up for that. It's going really well. Next slide. Our lifeguards are continuing their training down the beach. Next slide. Running the bull for the kids went over really well this year. We had a great turnout. There it is there. Next slide. Movie night and bonfire night. As you can see, the participation there. We're having huge crowds for that. You know, the movies are going really well. Thank you, Carol Everhart and the Chamber. Next slide. There it is again with the kids using the volleyball net. Next slide. So we did have to replace some stormwater pipes along McKinley. We had a survey done. Where we dug up was in the town right away. We did have some folks complain that own those residents there saying that we dug it up and replaced it with millings. We did replace it with millings because it is parking area. And if we replaced it with just grass, when it rained, people would have gotten stuck. So what we did do, we threw grass seed on top of it, and we're trying to get it to come back. And this fall, in case any of the commissioners are asked, this fall, we're going to rope those areas off, and we're going to put more grass seed in there to try to get the grass to come up through the millings, which has worked on Davenport Street really well for us. So you have the grass, but you have the millings underneath it. So when it rains, you don't have these big mud holes. Next slide. I know a couple of commissioners and the mayor have heard from folks tripping over some of the curbs there. We're repainting those curbs, and we're doing the fire lanes right now also. That's all I have for my comments.
Wonderful. Thank you. Any questions or comments?
Question, who was the instructor for the junior lifeguard program?
You know what? I'd have to ask Captain Fritchman that. Last year it was Lieutenant Zolper, Liam Zolper. I'm not sure who's filling in for him this year, but
I just got very good reports, a very good instructor.
I'll find out for you and let you
Okay.
know.
On the updates announcement, a reminder that beach tax is due by August 1st. We also have a new alderman in place, so I wanted to introduce Kelly Pettyjohn as our alderman, who's here. I didn't know if you wanted to come up to say anything about your first few weeks on the job, but I give you the opportunity to embarrass you.
Mr. Mayor, she has 7 years of experience with Laurel, the city of Laurel, before coming here.
Yes, 7 years of experiment. Yeah. Hi, thank you so much. So I just completed my 3rd week here in Dewey Beach, but yes, I was 7 years with the town of Laurel as alderman. So this, like I said, this is much different, but kind of the same. So I'm hearing a lot of the same cases, but instead of, fights being at Little Creek, we're at the Starboard. So it's very interesting. I'm really loving the balance that I'm finding here in the town of Dewey Beach. Just learning the parking. So, but I'm looking forward to taking a walk around town and getting to know the people and the parking and but otherwise it's been a welcoming town, and I'm enjoying getting to know everybody. But even though I'm there 3 days a week, it just feels like I'm there every day. So it's wonderful.
I don't know if that's a good thing or bad thing.
No,
but-
no, I appreciate it. I thank everybody so much. They've been warm and welcoming and very, very helpful. So
Great.
if you have any questions for me, I welcome any
Commissioners?
questions.
No.
No?
Thank you,
Okay.
Kelly.
I thank you all for your support.
Thank you,
Thank
Kelly.
you very much.
Thank you.
Next on, just another reminder is that we still have a vacancy for the Budget and Finance Chair. So if anyone has and knows of anyone qualified and willing to step up, please send them my way. And Community Reinvestment Fund grant. What is the update on? I didn't. Is that you, Ashley? Yeah. Okay. Well, why don't you go ahead?
So we received the $3 million grant. They'd like us to have.
Go to the
all our-
microphone. State your name. Where you from?
We were awarded the $3 million grant from the state. They'd like us to have all documentation to them no later than August 9th, if possible, because they will be going away that week. We'll receive the funding within 30 days of that, and we'll get it in a lump sum,
Wonderful.
which then it will be passed over to with Sheena and Bill for the accounting aspect to be in separate accounts and so on from that. And then hopeful to hear from Senator Coons soon. So,
Great.
Wonderful job.
So it's going to be in a
Good job.
separate account?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Ashley. Committee reports. Commissioner Persinger.
I know the audit committee is scheduled to meet on the 28th. The Charter and Code Review Committee, we're looking for a acceptable date. I think the 25th or 26th, but I don't know if they've actually set up anything yet. It's not on the town calendar yet, but hopefully they will be meeting sometime around that time. That's all I have.
Great. Commissioner Gibbings.
The investment committee met last night, and they will be forwarding a recommendation to town council that we return to our original investment policy in terms of short-term investments not being allowed to be in equities.
Well, we will review that when we get it. Okay.
Mhm.
Commissioner Barrick,
No updates for marketing.
Commissioner Jazinski,
Nothing on infrastructure.
and nothing on budget. All right, next on the agenda is approval of the June 17th, 2022 monthly town commissioner meeting minutes. Can I have a motion?
Motion.
Second.
The second. Any issues? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those go through unanimously. Action items. Number one, update by James Crane from CTC regarding the 5G poles. Mr. Crane, welcome via Zoom.
Good afternoon, everyone. So thank you for letting me come today. As you know, Verizon have been engaged in relocating and applying for some small cell sites in the public right of way. I can share my screen with you to show you a breakdown, but I can also give it to you either way.
If you can share, that'd be great.
Okay. Okay. So there have been some conversation with Verizon between the town of Dewey Beach prior to the first week of May, but they didn't formally apply for the applications. I received a phone call from an RF engineer that they had hired asking about requirements, but the applications weren't formally submitted until they paid the fee and they went through an online portal for the town of Dewey Beach, and that was on May 3rd. Verizon had engaged with an acquisition company called SmartLink, and the representative was Suzanne O'Berry, who I began to engage with. And we began a review for 3 applications that were adjacent to the public right of way, and they were adjacent to the following addresses that you can see on the screen: 3 Rodney Avenue, 15 Clayton Street, and 6 Cullen Street. So we began our intake and our review of comparing this to the ordinance and also reviewing the engineering aspects of the applications. On May 11th, Nirav Gori, who is a senior wireless engineer with CTC, came to do site surveys. He met with the town manager and the assistant town manager, and he was also the engineer that had reviewed these prior to coming out. On May 12th, I took the information I have from Nirav, prior to that and following the site survey and the information I had gathered, comparing these to the ordinance. And on May 12th, we sent requests for information to Suzanne O'Berry for each of the applications, and we copied the town on that, meaning the town manager. In between May 12th and May 27th, I did have some phone conversations with Suzanne O'Berry about completing the applications and the requirements. And some of these were not so much about the ordinances, but about our online system. And she had a 4th application that hasn't been filed yet. She talked to me about that, about filing that. But the next formal meeting was on May 27th, and that was a virtual meeting between myself, Suzanne O'Berry, and Wendy Anderson regarding the request for information that we had sent out. And we went over those in detail. On June 3rd, there was a meeting with myself and Nirav Gori, Suzanne O'Berry, Wendy Anderson, and the RF engineer who had called me prior, who was working for them, Andrew Peterson. And we talked specifically that day about the format for the radio frequency electric magnetic energy reports, the RF EME reports. Following that, there was another meeting with myself, Suzanne O'Berry, Wendy Anderson, and Andrew Peterson regarding how they had measured the setbacks of each site in the right of way to the homes and the locations that they put down for them, and how that was impacting on how they were conducting the report for the RF EME. And we understood the measurements they had taken, and that was resolved. However, about 2 weeks later, on June 29th, I was contacted by Wendy Anderson of Verizon, and she advised me that SmartLink is no longer handling the applications as a representative. The new representative is a company called Arianda. They are a company based in Haddonfield, New Jersey. I had some contact with their president, but I later, after 4th of July on July 7th, I had about a 45-minute meeting, a virtual meeting with Laura Moore, who will be handling the applications. And again, I went over the requests for information that had been sent to Verizon or have been sent to the applicant on these. And as with all the applicants and with the carriers, I made it known that I was always open for conversation or any questions that they had to continue to meet with me. There have been questions about a fourth site, and Laura Moore indicated that she wanted to make an application for that site, and she has the ability, but the assistant town manager can probably give more details on that, they have not paid the fee for that. So we have not yet seen that fourth site. So that's how we are to date. I haven't had any activity with them since July 7th.
Mr. Craner, are there any expected next steps from a timeline as to when we see this moving forward and can get some closure?
Well, I think I can be proactive and talk to Wendy Anderson and see if there's anything else holding it up. I think you have a situation where it's not just one document, one supporting document for the application, and you have an RFEME report, construction plans. That's your basic components, but they're all done by three different companies, or they're subcontracted to three different individuals. So we were able to make contact with Andrew Peterson, the RF engineer, so he understood what we needed for the RFEME reports. But the construction plans are being done by a different company, and the structural, which I don't have the RFIs in front of me, but there might be some corrections on those. So I think that's part of it is getting all that information together. And also, one good thing about having the dialogue is they're trying to get the submission in so that it can be reviewed and not sent back for mistakes that could be avoided. They're trying to get a review in that we can look at and make our recommendation.
Commissioners, comments?
Yeah, James, really a question. So according to the settlement that they had reached with our residents, there was a 90-day window to complete from their, is that from submission or from our approval?
Well, I have to look at the settlement if it made reference to the FCC shot clock, because when we issued the RFI, that stopped that shot clock.
Okay.
But there is the town can make a decision on if these are pending too long to say that they're going to withdraw them. Now, I'd have to look in your ordinance and see if you have a date for that. But if something's been pending, a couple months, some jurisdictions will withdraw them if there's no response.
Get this process moving along. I mean, this settlement was reached over a year ago with no action. And the clock wouldn't start until they submitted plans to us through our portal. So they've done that now. So I think it's up to us to really hold them to that clock. Am I wrong in assuming that? I mean, that's the agreement they reached to keep this out of courts and suing each other. I mean, I think it's against our responsibilities here if we just let it. I don't think we should let it slide.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I would get that document, and if we need to have a meeting with everybody, let's get everybody on the same page. I mean, you've agreed to stuff and then you're not doing anything. So that's not going to fly.
So the anchor point you're looking at is May 12th. That's when the clock was stopped. Right. And they have not resubmitted the applications in that time. So now we're over 60 days.
Fred, can you weigh in on this? No.
Town manager, you had a comment?
Go ahead.
So I asked Verizon's representative, Robert McGunkin, to be here at the meeting. He said he couldn't. I'm also going to invite him to August meeting. But understand, they do the applications to us, and Jim, please weigh in. They do the applications to us saying they want to move the poles to a certain area. We look at those, and then we look at our ordinance, which is 778, and then we go under, the design standards for small cell under, page 3, and it says along Route 1 should be the first one. The beachfront hotel, commercial, second one, co-location, the third one. So we push it back to them and say, no, you got to tell us why I can't go to those locations. And that's what their engineers are looking at now, because we're expecting them to provide that information back to us to explain to us why they can't put them in those locations, and they just want to put them in the locations that they want to put them into. So the process is taking some time. Now that they've got this new company, Verizon does their subcontractor, that's probably pushed it back even further. But Jim, have I missed anything on that?
No,
Wow.
I would like to add a couple of comments on that because Paul, Commissioner Bauer mentioned something about the 90-day timeframe in the settlement. And I want to point out the town was not involved in that settlement. That was between Verizon and Highway 1, not us. So I don't know how we weigh in on that. Secondly, we denied initially an application submitted by Verizon for Collins Avenue. Now that was rejected because they wanted overhead wires and we said absolutely not. So they took that back, put it on the drawing board and came back to us, submitted it, and then it was withdrawn because they wanted the check to be sent back, which no one did actually tore up the check, voided it and tore it up. So they have not submitted another check to even process that, and we're not about to go processing anything until they receive funds. The other aspect of that was that on the funding of that, Collins, we've had some issues and concerns about that, but I talked to Mr. McGuckin, Bob McGuckin, who is the Verizon's representative, and on another issue, because we've never received anything on St. Louis, which is another one, a pole that's on the at the beach end by the dunes. So interesting response on that was that they're trying to deal with something with Delmarva Power. And they had not come to an agreement of how they were going to handle that. So that's how it was left. So that's where we are right now. And we're just waiting for them to move ahead and James to review their currently the 3 that it has submitted. So that's the current status that we have at this point.
I had a question for Mr. Crane. The 3 that you have right now, are those still using millimeter wave as the RF technology underneath?
I believe so. I can pull up the apps to see.
And then the only other question I had is the grant or public funds we had to kind of assist with the moving. Is there any expiration date on that we're potentially running up against?
Thought with 3 years.
I believe it's 3 years.
So we have plenty of time from that regard. Okay.
Well, at this pace, we're.
Well,
Yeah.
we've used
Against the
one.
wall.
So I'm pulling up what an application looks like after it goes through the portal with all the documents. And doesn't say. Sorry if I'm going too fast. I can pull up the engineering notes. That's the antenna, which I believe uses millimeter wave. And
Coaching.
what I'll do is, so I'm showing you kind of the keys to the kingdom. These are Mr. Gary's notes on the application. So when he's looking at it, he is trying to see what they have. So they're removing 3 5G antennas on the utility pole with beach access, adding 3. But yeah, I can check for you about millimeter wave. That's
Yeah, I mean, the reason obviously is if they're not using millimeter wave, they don't need it to be that close to the beach entrance.
right.
And so I'm assuming that that's part of your evaluation.
Mhm. Yeah.
Mr. Crane, thank you for your update. I think the thing that frustrates me the most is that, as a commissioner for 2 years now, this has been in existence for that whole period, and we have not been able to get this done. As I walk the town on a daily basis, I see where those are on the dunes, especially now. One of our goals as a commission the council was to get these moved, and I feel like I don't know if it's a delay tactic on their part, but to the extent that we can be punitive, I'd like to move forward as possible because it's the big company taking advantage of a little town. And thank you for Highway 1 for at least raising their hands in the initial suit. But the reason why they stepped down was because they thought these actions were going to occur. So my opinion, we really need to force this issue because every day that they're out there, we're not doing the job for the rest of the town. So any other comments or questions for Mr. Crane? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Crane.
Okay. You take care.
Second, update by Jesse Hayden of Denrec regarding the replacement of the snow fence utilizing posts and ropes. First day with the new mouth. Mr. Hayden, how are you?
I'm doing well. Good afternoon, everyone.
afternoon.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners, for inviting me to speak here. So I'll give you an update on our dune fencing strategy. Before I leave, I also want to give a quick update on the Army Corps Nourishment Project, if you don't mind. So traditionally, we've all gotten used to the snow fence, the wire that links the wooden slats. That still can be seen throughout the coast. And most recently, we've been transitioning in some locations to this post and rope, which we recently installed in Dewey. We're calling both dune fence, and both have some advantages and disadvantages that I want to talk to you about. The snow fence is great at keeping people out of the dunes, which is the primary goal of fencing the dune in the first place, because it's a solid barrier. It's also great at accumulating the sand that blows in the wind, right? And so when we were in a condition like the picture behind me in the 80s and 90s, when there was water impacting structures, we wanted to capture as much sand as possible on the beach. And so using that snow fence was critical to growing the dune and growing the beach. In some places, we started in Fenwick Island, where they have an enormous dune. They aren't subject to as much storm erosion as other places. We started testing this post and rope fence because that also keeps people out of the dunes, but it allows the wind-blown sand to pass the fence, which means it can be blown up the dune and be trapped by the vegetation. So we're no longer accumulating sand just at the fence line, which has an effect of widening the dune. We're letting the sand blow up the entire dune, get trapped by the vegetation, which grows it in vertical and horizontal dimensions uniformly. So why don't we want to keep growing the dune wider and wider? Well, we'll run out of beach eventually. The dune can only grow to a certain size before, every time you go a foot vertical, you go at least 4 feet horizontal, right? So the sand wants to find its natural slope. We'll run out of place for people to sit. It's going to compromise recreational value. We saw that happen in Lewis a couple of years ago. Their dune was growing so rapidly, grass was growing out onto the berm, the flat part that people like to sit on, that we were getting complaints that the beach was too narrow. We do our survey and we say there's tons of sand there. So we started the post and rope up there too. We got similar criticism from the folks in Lewis, actually. But they've come to realize now that this is actually working for them. Another advantage of the post and rope is when we use it in the crossovers, especially crossovers where the Moby mats are used, which Dewey, I think, has them in almost every crossover, if not every crossover. It significantly reduces the amount of maintenance that's required on a daily basis to keep those free of sand. And so our team has worked closely with your maintenance staff to try to identify ways that we could improve each other's lives, basically. And by the way, a huge thank you to those folks for their help after the Mother's Day storms. We were definitely in a pickle ahead of Memorial Day, and it was a team effort. So whereas the sand fence, the snow fence would trap sand along both sides of the crossovers, it created a big maintenance burden in the crossover itself, requiring heavy equipment, ideally, or even people with shovels to go out and clear that out every couple of days. With the post and rope fence, that maintenance is significantly reduced. As I said, sand is allowed to pass freely, and the Moby mats are a great asset. Keeping them clear is really important. Post and rope disadvantage is that although it's good at keeping people off the dunes, it is more of a symbolic fence. It's not solid. People could step over it. People could lift it, move it aside. We've gotten a lot of criticism that dogs don't observe the fence, and so they're running into the dunes, and we acknowledge this. We acknowledge that for sure as a disadvantage, and I've told Mr. Zolper that we'll work together to try to keep track of those criticisms, and we'll respond if needed. We haven't seen widespread damage to the dunes yet as a result of the occasional trespass, but certainly something that we're tracking, and we're aware of that shortcoming of post and rope. But we feel right now the management strategy in Dewey is to allow a more natural flow of sand across the dunes, and so we're interested in keeping the post and rope as much as possible for that reason. So the management advantages outweigh the disadvantages for us right now.
Straight, if you don't mind, we'll go from topic to topic if that's, because I know that we all have questions or comments. You had made the first comment that I believe that Fenwick's dunes had grown too high at a point in time. And I'm just curious about the dunes here in Dewey. Are they at the optimal height, or like, are we where we should be, or should we be higher or lower?
If I said too high, I misspoke. I'm sorry. I will never say that dunes are too high, right?
That's what I hear things the way I want to hear them too.
I can be careless and with my words, I'm sure. So the dunes in Fenwick are large enough that we don't necessarily want them to grow horizontally anymore. The dunes in Dewey are at that same stage. When we look at the Army Corps projects that happen every 3 years in Dewey Beach, they have a design template that they want the dunes and beach to be restored to whenever they come into construction. If we were to rebuild to that design template, we'd be taking sand away from the dunes in Dewey Beach. So we are exceeding that template. I will never say that they're so high that we can do that we could harvest sand from dunes on a wide basis. That's not, there's always going to be risk that the next storm is going to be bigger, right? So that's why you won't hear me say that the dunes are big enough. But yes, the Dewey Beach dunes are relatively unique in the fact that they exceed the template. And so we don't necessarily want them to grow wider anymore. We want them to grow more uniformly across their whole surface area. So taller is still good, but we don't want to grow. We don't want to take up any more berm.
Okay. Right. Commissioners, any questions on that topic? No. Okay.
Update on when the
Beach renourishment.
Yes, the beach nourishment, we're due for a nourishment. So the Dewey project is combined with the Rehoboth Beach project, right? And every 3 years, so we're on schedule. What's happened now is the federal government has been appropriated some money, and then they asked the state for the match. We have recently provided that match. So what we're trying to do is get out of the way and let the Army Corps race towards that contract. That gives them the best chance possible to start and finish that work in the off season, right? We are constantly advocating for them to finish that work before Memorial Day next year, and we'll do the best we can. Now, I want to say that we don't yet know when that work will start, because the Army Corps has to go out for their public bid process, and they won't know schedules until they get a contractor on board. We are subject to the industry. Only a couple companies bid on these types of jobs, and because of infrastructure money, everything got funded last year. We're competing with projects from New York to Florida when we're going to bid this. So we wanted to get out of the way and give the Army Corps the best chance to get first in line and get a dredge contractor on board. So my understanding is that we are just now wrapping up our review of the engineering plans. We had no comments, no concerns. It looks like Dewey is set to get berm nourishment only. So like I said, they're not going to touch the dune. It's big enough already according to their plans. And that will go out to bid, I believe, next month. So we should know in September by September what the
are we
schedule is
next
gonna
in
be.
queue, or is Fenwick next? There's some confusion at last.
That's a good question. This contract that the Army Corps is going to do includes Rehoboth, Dewey, Bethany, South Bethany, and Fenwick. All 5 communities in one contract. The order of construction will be part of negotiating with the contractor. So we don't know that yet either, but it's all going to be part of one contract. And we're going to try our best to get the dredger to come here and not leave until they're all done.
Okay. Any other questions for the commissioners?
So if you're doing the contract summer, so the actual dredge wouldn't be showing up till next year, I'm assuming, based on you said contracting this summer, or no?
The goal is for starting in the fall of 2022.
The contractor having availability of their dredge?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I did have 2 quick questions since you're here. And they're very separate in nature. And this is also a point of Fred, as I walk the beach tonight, I also see, kids or people on the dunes when they shouldn't be. Do we have an ordinance that would say that I'm just thinking about penalties, you're not supposed to be on the dunes. Do we have anything in place? There's more, could we have, if we don't, could we? Since that DNREC technically controls the dunes.
There's a state law about going on the dunes.
Is there a penalty?
Yes.
Okay.
Standards per foot.
Okay. But we don't enforce it or
We do when it's
egregious. Okay.
You remove people from the dune.
Okay.
It's probably similar and effective in the same way that the dog licensing ordinances,
Okay.
people are made to.
So the lifeguards do it during the day between 10 and 5,
Yeah,
and then the police would come in afterwards if there's
Yeah,
still
there's
some issues.
mayhem on the beach after 5. Lifeguards leave. The other question that I had for you is I recently was up on the Rehoboth boardwalk and noticed a man in a wheelchair who was unable to obviously get to the beach. And we know that we have beach wheelchairs, but his equipment was much farther greater than just a normal wheelchair. And I had an idea where, is it possible, would it be possible if Dewey, if the commission is approved, to build almost like a deck on top of the dune, a dune right here behind if we all from it, because just so a handicapped person could see the ocean, be part of it. We can talk about it later if it's
We might have to follow up.
okay.
Our regulations about dune crossovers, unfortunately, are very prescriptive about what can be allowed.
Okay.
And a platform over the dune is not on the list. So I don't want to speak out of turn. Let's follow up on that one if you don't
I just think it'd
mind.
be a great amenity for those that are handicapped.
Sure, I understand.
Mr. Mayor, if you look down at the inlet there south of us, they have a really nice handicapped accessible ramp and stuff. And there's like, it may not be called a platform, but there's like an area where they can stop without going on the beach and kind of see it and stuff. So something probably is possible to be done. I don't know what the rules are.
Yes.
We'll talk about it. Just
And-
thought from 2 days ago.
Bethany Beach at Ocean View Parkway has the only wooden walkway ADA ramp that within an Army Corps project area. So that might be a model as well.
Okay.
Something to consider.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
we had also talked about having mats extend from the mats that already go over the dunes. And is that something we have to talk with you from DNREC? Like if they were to be perpendicular to the dune so that a beach wheelchair could go over the dune and then continue on a mat for a period?
Yes, we can consider that. I think that would fall under our temporary structure approval process. Mr. Zolfer can follow up with me or our permitting folks, and we can work with you on how to do that.
Wonderful.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Tom. Okay.
Thanks, Jeff. Appreciate it.
Number 3 on the agenda had been moved. Do you think that's a good time? I'm getting counsel from Commissioner Bauer that this might be a good point before we get into some of the discussions to recognize Joyce, who's in the audience. Joyce this is her last day. I'm surprised she's actually here and not in Starwood or somewhere else. But after 34 years of service, and we sincerely appreciate it. And you've been Dewey Beach for all that time. All right. Look at this smile.
We get a picture.
Should we? You and your pictures. Well,
Joyce, it's her day.
then what are we going to do with Commissioner Gibbings? Have her up there and do it in the front?
We'll do it right in front of the TV.
We'll take a quick time out for Paul to have a picture.
Come on, we got this nice thing in the back.
So when you become really famous, you're referred to by one name, and Joyce apparently has reached that. Yeah, just.
We're gonna have Elizabeth over.
Yeah, you could be in the picture, but
Gary, put her on your shoulders.
Call choice.
Let you go by.
Oh.
Thanks. All in his pictures. All right.
Remember at those big moments.
I get it. Number 4, discuss a possible vote to approve Robert Day, Rick Berline, Paige Martin, Phil Winkler, Susan Trencher, and Stephen Eckerman as election officials for the 2022 Town of Dewey Beach election. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
moved.
Second by
Second.
Paul? That's it. You a little delay, Commissioner Giving. Sorry about that. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 That passes unanimously. Number 5, discuss a possible vote to approve the qualifications as established by the town manager to be advertised in the solicitation as a chief of police as stated in section 19B of the charter of the town of Dewey Beach, Delaware. Town manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So after reviewing the town charter and looking at that I have to provide the qualifications for the next police chief to the commissioners to review and to vote on, I came up with this list. Now, this list of qualifications has been reviewed by Captain Warren, retired from the state police, by Chief Pat Ogden, who's now with the University of Delaware. He's the chief of police there. Been reviewed by our town solicitor. It's been reviewed by Diane Campanella. It's been reviewed by Sheena. It was also reviewed by Chief Mackert before he left. There were some adjustments made based on some thoughts, especially about the COPT certification. My thoughts on that were that we should be able to let folks apply if they're not COPT certified under Section 800, Title I of the Delaware statute. But the way the code is written up, it makes it somewhat difficult. And I want the commissioners and the mayor and everybody to know that this process will be very transparent. It's going to be fair, but I want the biggest candidate pool that we can get so the best person is selected for this position. With that being said, these are the recommendations that I came up for the qualifications. And that was based on the review of those individuals that I've just listed for you. If you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them.
So I guess a few things. One is, obviously with the person has to live somewhat near here, so I kind of get that. But you start by talking about a 40-mile radius, which would include places in Maryland. And then at the bottom, it talks about maintaining a valid Delaware driver's license. So is your intention that even if they Maryland resident, they have to get a Delaware driver's license to have the position?
They would, and I would want them to live either in Sussex County or within a radius of 40 miles for response.
Right, and I
to
get
the
that.
town.
Yeah, I get that. So on that regard, I would like to think that we could say that they would get that like after being accepted an offer, right? Because if they're not local, they may not have that from the beginning. On the COPT certification, I went and took a look back at the charter, and it clearly says that they have to meet the requirements of Section 800. But it doesn't say they have to be certified, and it doesn't say they have to be certified when they apply. So clearly we need to ensure that they meet that requirement, but people make contingent offers all the time. And I think that what we need to tell them is that prior to beginning employment, they have to meet the requirements of Chapter 800. And we make it a requirement, an applicant from out of state who is very close to meeting the requirement and knows that if they're down selected, that they can easily complete whatever steps are needed to become fully certified. And that would allow someone to still apply for the job. And then if things are looking positive, they could go ahead and complete that so that they would be able to begin employment.
We would have to come up. We would need to come up with a time that they have to acquire the qualifications to meet what our charter says. So I mean, we would have to say you have so much time to get qualified, right, in COPT. Right now, the only, and correct me if I'm wrong, Lieutenant, the only way you can be certified in the state right now is attending one of the 4 academies, Wilmington, Newcastle County, Dover, and the State Police Academy. The captain in charge of the State Police Academy reviews folks from out of state when they want to be certified in COPT to see if their qualifications meet what Delaware's are. The captain of the State Police Academy meets with others. So if somebody has their transcripts or their background, all their education in law enforcement, they turn it into the captain of the state police. This is the way I understand it. And then that captain, along with others, review that and see if they meet the qualifications under 800 Title I. That's the way that's done. But they don't meet all the time. So if we had somebody apply that gave those qualifications, we'd have to wait. And I don't have a problem with that. I don't mind doing it for 90 days or 180 days and give them a conditional hire pending on that. I think the city of Dover is doing that right now with their chief. And I think that gives us a broader aperture of people who could apply. But the way I read the charter, to me, and after talking to Mr. Townsend about it, I actually changed the qualifications to read the way they do.
So like, I just want to make one point. So like on your point about the academy, it says in here that the council may waive the requirement for attending Delaware Police Training Academy for out-of-state police officers seeking Delaware certification if they have completed training that's equivalent, for instance. So I don't think it's cut and dry that somebody couldn't necessarily apply and be close and know that, hey, I'm being down selected. I got to go through this and make sure that I'm going to completely have it. Obviously, if they're not going to meet the requirements of 800, we would never extend an offer. And if we thought they were, or, it ends up being, kind of someone who's already within Delaware.
I thought I heard you differently, and I just want to confirm. I thought your read of the qualifications, if they had the qualifications, that was sufficient. They also need to have the certification.
It says nothing about
That's
certification.
so if they have the qualifications, and we know that we're going to go through that process as we go through resumes,
right?
We'll know whether or not they would qualify for it. So
I'm not.
that's how. Go ahead.
No, I'm just saying, it's not clear to me when I look at the section of the Delaware Administrative Code, making a judgment about whether somebody is qualified or not may not be that easy. And what the town charter says is that each applicant, and Bill is going to present us with at least three applicants. They all have to satisfy the requirements of the section of the Delaware Administrative Code. So again, I don't know how we're going to judge that somebody's in fact satisfies those requirements. There's also, if you read this administrative code, one of the things it says is that failure to pass the competency examination, there was a competency examination associated with certification. If you fail to pass that competency examination, it renders the applicant unable to become certified with police powers in the state of Delaware. So that kind of says to me that if you have an applicant who comes in and you want to make an offer to that person, they have to actually have to pass this examination before we could offer them and actually employ them, or they would not be certified with police powers in Delaware. My only concern about this, and I raised it at the last meeting, my concern is that we follow the letter of the charter,
right?
Because I don't want to give anybody an opportunity to challenge the eventual result of this process.
Well,
We just need to be careful about this, as careful as possible.
So people make contingent employment offers on a regular basis, right? And so you can make a contingent employment offer that says you have to go through this by this point in time, or this offer is null and void, right? So, and when we're down selecting candidates, we're going to be able to look at them and know, is this person close to being able to do this? And it's just like they have to kind of check these boxes and maybe take an exam, or is this person really kind of far away from meeting that requirement?
I'm also hoping that process happens before the 3 come to us.
Right.
That they already have been qualified.
Yeah, if you get somebody from Delaware, I would expect that, they've met all the requirements.
Yeah, they have to be.
But and I sort of looked at Fred on this, I think there's an interpretation issue here. If we say that we believe this pool of applicants, we believe this pool satisfies the criteria that are specified in this section of the administrative code, then we can continue our process and continue to evaluate whether in fact they do satisfy those criteria that are part of the administrative code. But at some point, it sounds like there has to be a final, if we're talking about somebody from out of state, there has to be a final evaluation, and maybe that's the process that you were talking about. And I don't know how the timing of all that fits together, but I just feel a little uncomfortable that, you know, we don't have firmly in mind exactly how the process should work.
Well, the agenda item is to look at the qualifications. I don't know if you had, jump in unless you had a comment.
I could comment.
Okay.
The way I view the timing of it is that I think we could receive an application from someone who doesn't at that particular time meet the qualification. But when it comes time to advancing the candidates from the town manager to council, I believe the wording of the statute is such that those individuals all have to meet the qualification. I mean, that's
Meeting the qualifications and having certification, two different things in my head.
Yeah, the word in the charter is satisfied.
So
just curious, I mean, Dover hired someone from Pennsylvania recently to be the
Right.
police chief, right?
Mhm.
So I don't know what their charter says, but I assume at some point that person got their certification from the state of Delaware, whether it was prior to their employment or immediately after their employment. Did you have any background on how that happened?
So from what I understand, it took him, or I'm not sure, some time, and it may still be pending, because if the committee or the captain of the state police academy says, you need this course, you need this class to be certified under COPT Delaware, you either have to wait. If it's a class that they're requiring them, that's only taught at one of those 4 academies, you'd have to wait and take it at the academy. It's one that can be done online. You may be able to just do it online and pick it up very easy. You may have somebody who applies from another state that meets our qualification, right? But we're limiting our aperture by not opening it up. But the way this is written, we definitely have to have folks that I think that meet the qualifications when I give you the candidates, the applicants to vote on.
no, I don't think we're limiting the town. I don't believe we're limiting by sticking with the charter. I think what we can do is kind of what Commissioner Jazinski has alluded to, is they could be hired contingent upon, if the candidate comes and they're from out of state, they can come and be an employee, but they cannot be the chief until they have passed that. And they have, could be very similar to the 6 months of moving to Sussex County. That there's a, you know, there's a process where they can't even be employed until.
How about, let's hypothetically, we offered somebody the job that didn't have the qualifications. We would say, all right, you can start when you get that qualification complete.
Yeah, I mean,
Your start date's gonna be
it would be a
contingent on you-
contingent job offer, and their contract would tell them, if you don't get it by this time, you know, it's
Right.
sorry about your luck, right?
We withdraw the offer after
That's
6
not
months.
what I heard Fred say.
Well, that's, our charter was changed not very long ago.
Mhm.
And under our prior charter, I think you would have had a great deal more flexibility.
Okay.
Some are concerned about the process being attacked subsequent to council making an offer. And the way this reads, the town manager is obligated to supply at least 3 candidates who meet the qualifications and who satisfy the requirements of the Delaware Council on Police Training under Regulation 800. So whether that was intentional or not, I think the most defensible reading of that is that the 3 candidates sent to you for your consideration need to meet that requirement.
So Fred, when I read this, the paragraph starts off with the town council shall appoint a chief of police. And then there's the who and whereas clauses, and who satisfies the requirements of the Delaware Council on Police Training, Regulation 800. So basically, it's saying that we can't appoint someone to the position of chief of police unless they meet those requirements. But it doesn't say that they have to meet those requirements to be an applicant. It says that the recommended by the town manager who meet the qualifications established by the town manager and approved by the town council. But the and who satisfy the requirements, I interpret to go back to the town council's appointment, not the recommendation from the town manager.
Commissioner Persinger.
Yeah, I don't see that interpretation grammatically. I think, to me, the sentence structure is clear that both of those who clauses refer to the applicants and not to the police chief. Again, I don't want to, I wouldn't have a problem with this kind of process if we could do something provisional. I'm just concerned that we're going to go through this process and get to the end of it and give someone an opportunity to challenge what we've done. And I just don't want to go down that. I think, at minimum, we should change the wording in the list of qualifications there to the same wording that we have in the charter, which is because that talks about certification and the charter talks about satisfying the requirements. So again, we can go through a process, you get a pool of applicants, and then I think it's incumbent on the town manager to go through whatever process is necessary to evaluate the backgrounds and experience of those applicants and give us a judgment that they do or they don't meet or satisfy the requirements of Regulation 800 of Title I.
Any other conversation? I agree with you, Gary, in terms of, if that was on there from a qualification for certification. Hopefully this is not going to be an issue, but I also don't want to be put in a position where whoever we decide is challenged.
Right. So are we going to say that we're going to eliminate what was the language that was used? We're going to eliminate the language that said that they were certified because it's not part of the charter. The question is, can they apply, or do we just say that they have to meet the requirement, in order for us to offer them the job?
Under any circumstances, I think they can apply. The rubber meets the road when the town manager's obligation to
Bring it here.
Right.
to bring it to you.
So, it's also being courteous to any applicants. You don't want people going down, wasting their time, right? And so if it's not going to be feasible, so I think it's important that in the qualifications that are published, that we tell them you have to meet these requirements of Section 800.
Right.
And then they're going to make a determination whether they think that they can meet that standard or not. And that's really upon them. And the review committee is going to look at it and say, no, this person's not close to this, So they're going to get filtered out kind of anyway, in my opinion, if they really aren't there, But I'd like to see that. And I'd also like to see, just so that people think that, someone just has to have a driver's license, to begin employment. They don't need to have the driver's license at the time they apply, which kind of is down towards the bottom.
Similar with from a time frame. Are you saying like number one within 6 months?
No, they have to get their driver's license before they start the position,
Just a driver's license, not a Delaware driver's license.
No, Delaware driver's license. So
Okay.
you said that that's a requirement in the state of Delaware, right? Is to have a Delaware driver's license, or do I interpret your answer wrong?
I don't know that.
Okay.
But that was on the list of qualifications that I received from RHR, Diane Campanelli.
Okay.
So I don't know, and I don't know if the lieutenant knows if it's a requirement that you must have a Delaware driver's license to be COPT certified in the state, but I can find that.
I think the intent was that they would have a valid driver's license. I think the intent on number one that you put in qualifications that they live in Sussex County, so they're accessible to us. Now, to your point, what happens if they live in Ocean City?
Well, 40 miles includes a lot of Maryland, right? Yeah.
There's part of me that I'd question the 40-mile radius versus living in Sussex County. So is it?
So the reason I have that in there, so if we get somebody qualified that's a captain in Ocean City and they live in Ocean City, that they're within the 40-mile radius that they could still applied for the position.
They live in Sussex County or 40 miles, like it's Delaware, Maryland. It's about,
You can't get a Delaware license.
Do you need a Delaware to drive our police vehicles?
Lieutenant, do you know the answer to that?
I do not. I guess through our insurance, Sheena may be.
Because that might be why that's included. And I would obviously want the chief to be able to drive a vehicle.
I'll have to find that out.
So what I think I don't know that we're ready to make a motion because there's.
Okay,
questions.
yeah, I was just going to try to agree on the wording for the second bullet. And I was just going to suggest that it say must satisfy the requirements of the Delaware Council of Police Training under Regulation 800 of Title I of the Delaware Administrative Code when applying for the position.
Why don't we just leave out the when applying for the position piece?
Well, that police chief qualifications.
I agree with that. Because I do think that if someone was on the verge of, or was told they were a possible candidate, they could try and accomplish that qualification.
I'm okay with that in terms of removing it.
Okay.
And from a grammatical perspective, I agree with Commissioner Persinger that our charter clearly says they need to satisfy the requirements of the Delaware Council on Police Training under Regulation 800 or Title I. And they can't come to us without that. So however we can make the bullet point of the job description, which I think seems to match it, but it says they have to have it in our
Okay.
charter.
All right. So what Commissioner Persinger said, minus the when applying for the position, is part of whoever will make a motion. And then the second is the Delaware.
So,
License.
well, I think we just need to talk fundamentally. Do we insist that they live in the state of Delaware?
No,
Or is
no,
someone
I-
living in the state of Maryland okay?
So I don't think they should have to live in the state. That's why I put or within 6 months, live within a 40-mile radius. Because again, you could get a candidate that lives right across the border, right across the state line, right?
Why don't we just take the word Delaware out right now? So that we can be agreed on the qualifications, unless we're told that in order to drive a police car in Delaware, you have to have a Delaware license.
Or our insurance.
Okay.
You don't. The lieutenant looked it up. You don't have to have a Delaware driver's
Under
license, correct?
COPT.
Under COPT. It's just a driver's license.
All right. We'll take Delaware out.
Just take Delaware out.
Driver's license.
Any other questions?
Just one quick comment. In terms of the second bullet again, I know I'm overly focused on this, but I think it's important. So if we have somebody that, as Fred suggests, who is close to satisfying all the requirements, I would think it would be, again, incumbent on the town manager to make it clear to that potential applicant that that person must fully satisfy those requirements before that person could be presented to us as an applicant. Is that fair to say? Okay.
And please understand, I will be making that decision. They take all their background information, they take all their resume, they take all their transcripts from all their training, and they have to turn that into the COPT. They have to turn that into the state police captain at the academy, the way I understand it. And then they review it, and then they say if they meet those requirements. And if they don't, then they're not going to be qualified for this position.
Well, but that's for certification. So are you saying that any applicant would have to go through that process and get certificate? You're basically saying they have to get certification before they could present it to us as an applicant.
I would think before I could give you 3 names or 4 names or 5 names, they have to meet that.
To have the requirements.
Yes. I mean, that's the way I read the charter, unless I'm
Which
wrong.
means somebody in the police academy has to make that
It's
determination.
not, I can't make that decision. I don't have the ability to say that you're good enough to be COPT in Delaware. That's not made by me. It's made by the captain. The way I understand it is the captain from the state police with a group. They turn the information and they review it and they say, yeah, you meet the requirements.
So scenario, Bill, is that if somebody from New Jersey comes in and they meet all the, so we have the ability to submit that to the state for them to review.
They have to actually submit it.
They have to.
They do it, not
Okay.
not the town manager,
Okay.
not Lieutenant Hire,
Okay.
not anybody else.
All right.
Okay.
This
And if
sounds,
anybody would, oh, I'm sorry.
this sounds very similar to my professional license. I'm required to have a license to have a job, but I have to submit it to the state for authorization. And I like the fact that this is a second set of folks looking at the qualifications of an applicant. So I think whoever did this part of the charter was quite wise. Thank you.
Is it you? Okay,
Smart
My
person,
guess is
whoever it was.
served.
so do we
Thank
have a
you. Thank you,
motion to
Elizabeth.
move this forward, or is this something that we should table for the following month? I'll leave, it. I can't motion, so.
I would that we move it forward with the removal of the word Delaware in the line that talks about driver's license and just have it be valid driver's license.
Is that the motion?
That's the motion, please.
I'll second it.
Were you going to change the language in the second bullet
Right.
as
Yes,
part of your motion?
Elizabeth,
Uh,
Gary, can you read it back?
no,
Yeah,
I'm
but
looking-
it would say must satisfy the Delaware Council of Police Training under Regulation 800 of Title I of the Delaware Administration Code. When applied.
say as it is.
Period. Yes,
Bullet point 2 is consistent with the town charter.
right. That's the wording that I'm suggesting.
So we have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
It passes unanimously with the revisions. Number 6, review the June 2022 financial statements.
State your name, where you're from.
Sheena Hall, and I'm from Crazy Train. Afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. There's, the financials are looking very nice. Our revenues were above what we had expected due to transfer tax and building permits and hotel tax coming in higher than we had projected. Our expenses were a little bit higher than we had projected. However, we've got the new resident welcome bags, new town hall plans, some employee training, and just general increases in costs. The gas, as you all know, is not happy. Yes, and with, due to the fact that the town is, we have more officers out there on the weekends to make sure that everybody's safe. You know, it's just extra costs. I've looked at the numbers based on last year, and I think we're looking good to hit budget this year. Now, this is only 3 months. Don't quote me. But I don't think we're going to have an extensive amount of overage because with interest rates going up, as much as, you know, we'd love to see the building, you know, boom, go, continue, and the transfers continue. I think the interest rates are going to slow everything down, which there's nothing we can do about that. Our building permits are at phenomenal rate compared to last year. Our parking permits, now our daily and our meter rates or revenue is lower, but our seasonal is higher than it has ever been. We have sold more seasonal parking permits this year than we have in the 5 years I've been here, which we're totally floored about. So this is great. More people are buying the yearly. I can deal with that. One, as you know, the auditor said we needed the separation of duties, which I was tickled about. We brought on somebody to do the day-to-day accounting. We have also brought on Falcassen, a local accounting firm, that they are going to every quarter review the bank reconciliations, the journal entries, and, you know, just make sure everything's right and make sure we're following the general fund policy, the fund balance policy, long before we get to the audit. They're going to help me put together, along with Cone Resnick, a packet of financials that will give you, hopefully, Commissioner Persinger, all your answers as soon as you look at it. But we'll also go from audit to audit where the financials is easy to track. They've already got the first quarter financials, everything, and I'm hoping to have that back end of next week. And I've talked to the auditors, and there's been some things that we've had to switch around and all, but it's looking to be fairly decent. So, any questions?
Questions from the commissioners?
I'm going to hold you to that budget forecast for the full year, given we're only in the middle of July.
Please don't.
I mean, I've already raised my questions to Sheena and the town manager in an email. And part of my goal is just to make sure that we can show definitively that we are abiding by the general fund balance policy that we adopted. So I want to see that unassigned balance get up to, the 590 range, which is where it's supposed to be. And I think we can get there. I think we just need to sort out some of the issues and how things are being accounted for. And some things I certainly could be wrong because I'm still learning about these things as well.
Well, the one thing that we can do, Gary, is obviously if we need to pull back from what we allocated to the town hall, the 2,150,000, we could make a change to put that back in the unassigned to get to the 590 that you're looking for. We say we could because we did do that. When we did that, we didn't anticipate the $3 million.
Yeah, I'm hoping we
By next month.
don't have to
I agree.
do that. Yeah, I mean, I really would like to maintain what we have. I mean, we're really looking in great shape for the cost of a new town hall with over $5 million.
And we don't really even have, our selected architecture firm didn't even want to nail down the budgetary figure to plan on. So,
Yeah.
And we don't know what's going to happen with Senator Coon's office.
I tend to think the money's there to get us to the right numbers. It's just we need to figure out how to get there.
Sheena,
Yes, sir.
I got a question on the hotel tax. What is the date that it changes? Right, we raise April 1st. So
No, I
Was
thought it was
April?
July 1st.
No, it was April 1st. It was beginning of the financial.
the beginning of the fiscal year.
Yeah.
Okay.
It went to 2.
Yes, sir.
So it's a 2. And then when do we could look to raise it again next year to that full 2.5. And then 3 is our cap. Okay.
Just summary, I tend, and this is for the general public, I look at the sheet, month to month, you're going to have variations. And over time, those things get smoothed out. So when you look at where we are from year to date perspective, sitting at 1,374,000 versus 1,235 in revenue, sitting at 950,000 versus 1,078,000. Before set asides and expenses in other funds, not the general operating, we're at 423 versus 156. Need new glasses. So the town is doing very well, but I think all of us understand that some of those buckets associated with transfer tax are in future they're going to be challenging.
Yeah.
And that's why as we look towards other sources of revenue, we'll have to focus on that in the upcoming year.
I did I was able to receive from all the towns from Lewis to Fenwick, their fee schedules, all their fees. And I got Karen, my assistant, to put that all into one giant spreadsheet so that we can compare, hopefully close to apples and apples, for looking at the fees of the different towns as to what they charge for their licensing and stuff.
So we'll discuss whether that's something we want to add to a future agenda before the budget for the new year, whether that be, October or November, to take a look at the fee structure. Okay. Thank you, Sheena.
Thank you, Sheena.
Town manager comments.
Yeah, I just want to say that working with Lieutenant Hocker to address some of the challenges we are having after 5 o'clock in the evening on the beach. Some of those challenges are sometimes glass on the beach. And I'm not talking about broken glass. I'm just saying in the trash cans, there are sometimes a number of glass bottles down there. Making sure the people that are having bonfires actually have permits and making sure there's not a lot of underage consumption down there. I've been working with the lieutenant. He has now got the police. I'll let him talk about that a little bit more on the beach. Our number one concern is safety and security, and that's why you're going to see more police cars out there on the weekends, especially on Friday and Saturday nights. Lieutenant will talk about that. And my second priority is trash not only on the beach, but in the town. We are addressing that. We have somebody that John is addressing that very well. And then the third thing is I'd just like to thank all the folks on our staff. They're doing a great job, and the lifeguards and the police.
Thanks. Thank you, Town Manager. Lieutenant?
Good evening, everyone. So 4th of July was uneventful as far as any police activity. Was several people in town. We closed out the night with a ceremony for Chief Mackers, kind of called a walkout ceremony where the chief comes out and does his final radio broadcast that he's going 10/7 duration, which is no longer in service. And we had one of our former officers come in and reply to him on the radio and read a small speech to him to
Nice.
finish out his night. So it was good to have him in town. He got to go down to gave him the keys to the gator. He took the gator down to the marina, watched the fireworks without having to do anything as far as any official business. He got to listen to me on the radio and manage things from where he usually.
So he's in
sits.
layman's clothes doing this?
No, he was in uniform. I had him in uniform, and he went down there and watched the fireworks. So it was a good night. It was a good
Great.
thing. Glad to have him in town. So grant opportunities are coming up, and we have several grants we're going to be applying for over the next few weeks. The county grant just came in for we usually buy the new police car for $30,000. That just came in the other day. Paperwork's filled out on that. And we have a few others that are coming open that we'll be applying for, as we usually do every year. These are the same grants. We'll be applying for them. Let's see. We recently partnered with Police One Training Academy to provide in-service training for our full-time police officers. It will also assist us in completing our seasonal police academy for our seasonal officers. They'll be able to get a lot of training prior to coming into the classroom setting. So it'll kind of expedite the process to get the requirements under council on police training done before they come into the classroom, and we'll be able to focus on some other things and expand on some other training that we feel is necessary for Dewey Beach. The extra officers on Friday and Saturday nights, it's been very effective, and it's going to continue. We've been very busy on the weekends, and as I'm sure you can read in the newspaper and online and whatnot. So that's going to continue. As the town manager alluded to, as you commented about the beach kind of being a party, as soon as the lifeguards go off duty, we now have officers hitting the beach at 5 o'clock when the lifeguards go off duty and staying out there as they see fit. The more people on the beach, the longer they'll stay, unless they're obviously needed for some type of emergency on the streets. So they'll be out there all night long. Let's see.
Are you using patrolmen in that or for seasonals?
Seasonal police on the gator, so they can cover more ground. And they patrol the beach, and if they need help, they call what street they're in, and we go out and send assistance if need be, if it's a large crowd or whatnot. And so far so good. No major incidents. Everybody seems to be complying, but they're out there. So we did lose an officer last month. Officer Wilson took a job with another agency. So we had a vacancy. We have filled that vacancy with a new officer, a certified officer. Many years of experience. He actually worked for us as a part-time officer. His name's Carl Curtin. He's hired on as a patrolman first class, and it's working out nicely. And I do not have any other comments.
Before we move on, Town Manager, is there a reason why this?
Yeah, so I handed these out. So as I said earlier, we had 2 teams qualified for nationals from the regionals. Both are a 4x4 men relay team. Both came in first and second. So both of those qualified for the nationals. And Captain Fritchman's going to get me additional information that I will forward to the commissioners when that national is taking place in Formosa, California. They're going to try to raise approximately $10,000 to make the trip out there.
Commissioner comments. Commissioner Bauer.
Yeah, I'd like to thank the staff and our police department, our lifeguards. Everything seems to be going well. I really appreciate the extra work with with public safety. I mean, it's, we're in a much better spot than we are today than we were a month ago. So keep up the good work. Thank you. And that's all I got to say.
Commissioner Givings.
I concur with what Commissioner Bauer just said, and to call out one particular city employee, Rebecca, who is one of our parking ambassadors. I've observed her going above and beyond. Cars that are disabled, she's working with the folks to see how they might get towed. And also if they're having an emergency, like I have to get to an interview, she's helping them get Ubers and things like that. That's the kindness really goes to the heart of our town. And I wanted that to be acknowledged in our minutes.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Jazinski,
No comments.
Commissioner Persinger,
No comments.
and I have no comments. With that, I'd like a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.